What's happening, guys? James Blunt here with MMOHuts.com, and I'm here with the legendary Dave Jortson and the legendary Terry Michaels on EQ Next and Landmark. We're going to be talking about Landmark first here. So, Landmark has changed so much since we've seen it last year. Tell us a little bit about what has come into the game, how the players have created these incredible structures, and then what's next. Let's talk about that.
You want to?
Go ahead,
okay, I'll start off. Well, I mean, so in January when we went into alpha with Landmark, people came into the game, and I mean, almost immediately they started doing things with the tools and the engine that we didn't even know it was capable of doing, and they taught us about some of the things that could be done in the game, the level of visual quality and fidelity that they could get, and everything that we give to them, they continue to do that same thing. They take it and they use it in ways that we've just never imagined. You know, we think of 10 ways, they find 100. And it's just amazing to see what they do with the stuff.
And the best part is now we're adding new systems. And they're going to do the same dang thing with those new systems. They're going to push them in all kinds of directions we didn't expect. And Landmark is about to explode because of the... Well, I'll just rattle through the list.
Go for it.
So we got the PvP systems and the game set objects. The monsters are coming in the next month. We've got the platforming stuff, so you have teleporters and flingers and moving platforms.
Right.
I mean, there's just a ton of stuff. So all of a sudden, it goes from being this static build-out game where people were making really incredible, amazing stuff, but now they can actually start to make it come alive. And then later on, we'll also do the game mastering sets and the AI tools and all that other stuff. So Landmark becomes less of a sandbox where you're just building something and showing it off to other players, but now it's a virtual reality machine where you can basically build anything you can imagine and other people can come in and experience it. Yeah. That's what Landmark is.
That's amazing. So very soon we're going to see the combat like you were mentioning, and I guess that means that we're not going to be immortal now.
No, on the 27th, actually, now you have to be careful out in the world. You know, falling damage, drowning, going into PvP and having other people kill you can absolutely happen.
That snuff film we made for the keynote is absolutely my favorite part of the keynotes.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun watching how many ways people can die, and that'll add a lot to the game because, you know, like our game is to get a little bit serious. We have builders and crafters, adrenaline seekers now. We've got explorers, and all these different kinds of players need each other for it to be a real community, for us to have a thriving in-game economy, and for the players to actually want to bond with each other. After all, that's what an MMO is about. If you're playing by yourself, you don't need an MMO. And so we're setting things up so that, like, for instance, crafters can make some really amazing gear that the adrenaline seekers will want. But they don't have the pieces for it unless the adrenaline seekers go out there and start killing monsters and stuff and bringing back the stuff to be able to make the really cool things that they want. So all of a sudden now these two groups of people need each other. And then we've also got, like, the PvP guys are building battlefield maps, and the scenario builders are building their own stuff, but they don't necessarily want to build a castle. So now the builders that are making all these really cool buildings have an audience for their stuff, and they really want it. And then the builders get really happy because they can see their stuff actually being used in the game. So it all fits together, and it's finally coming to life now.
Yeah.
And pretty soon you're going to have a bunch of obstacle courses with the flingers and the teleports and the level.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks, those are going to show up. I mean, we've been playing with them for a couple of weeks now at work, and just the things that we've come up with are amazing. And like we talked about with the other tools, you know, letting players get out there and get their hands on these things, and as we add more kinds of them, I have no idea what we're going to see in a week or a month, but it's going to be amazing. I do know that.
I totally have my claim cleared off because I knew exactly. As soon as we had that stuff, I started imagining like fields of mouse traps where you get flung all over different places, and I've got there's a million different ideas for ways that we can do stuff, and the ways that you can mix all that platforming stuff in with regular build outs or even with like PvP arenas and stuff. It just brings it all. It makes it much more dynamic and exciting, and so yeah, we're all looking forward to what happens with the players.
And so with PvP, let's talk a little bit about that. How is PvP being introduced in there? You have to actually put down an item on your claim, and it's all claim-based. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's all built around this idea. We want to make sure that everything we put into the game is intuitive to the players. And so the way you would create these PvP scenarios on your claim are by placing down these particular types of objects. The game
set objects.
Game set objects, thank you.
We changed the name last week.
Yeah, so it happens. The game set objects as we place them down, and by putting them on, you're basically defining what kind of game you want. So it's not a scripting language, or it's not like choosing options from a drop-down list. It's more tactile, it's more interesting to the players, and it's more approachable for everybody. You want a respawn point, you place it down, and you know exactly where it's at. And all the different pieces work together, so you can combine them. We were talking about the movers and everything. These things, you can combine them in different ways to create different kinds of games, so that way it just explodes with what people are doing out there.
I've made PvP games in the past. I worked on Tribes 2. I was the producer and creative director for the original Planet Side. I'm very familiar with what those games are like. And the reality of it is, those games are super fun when the map is astounding. The map has more to do with your fun in one of those games than the base mechanics often do. So what we're trying to do is create simple mechanics that people can go nuts with, and then they create like map after map after map and scenarios and ways that they can use it. And, you'll have floating citadels that people are grappling up to be able to do a capture and hold, and subterranean stuff, and it'll all be very, very visceral, very mobile, and it should be exciting.
I am now picturing that floating citadel with flingers for people that step in the wrong place.
Oh, man. As soon as we started messing with heroic movement and decided to put PvP in, all the little tribes bells started ringing in my head.
Yep. I could totally see that happening, and I am going to die to falling damage so much.
I know. It'll be a comment.
You're that guy.
I am that guy. Oh, what? I'm not supposed to go there? Ah!
No more swam dives off the corner.
I'm going to have to get those the anklets.
Flingers never stop being fun.
No.
I was making death traps all of a sudden, so you could teleport it into a globe, and it had flingers all the way around the edge and teleporters with landmines in the center. So as you got teleported around, the landmines would get activated, and then you got teleported into the middle. Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah.
I bet.
Mostly it's fun watching people get in there.
Yes. And speaking of landmines, that's something that you just recently added to the game, and that's going to be part of PvP. That's scary.
Yeah. Well, traps, all those kinds of things. We'll be expanding those types of elements in the game moving forward. That's the thing with Landmark is every week, every month we're adding more and more pieces to it, and we're working on it with the players so that we can make sure that it's what they want. And I can't wait to see the first time somebody dies to a landmine that's behind that chest, like we showed in the video.
Oh yeah.
And we tried really hard to make it clear that the way that we're building Landmark is the reason why we're building those specific pieces is because that's what we need for EverQuest Next. Now, there will come a day when EverQuest Next launches and Landmark is still its own game, where they'll start to deviate because the different audiences will want different things. But for now, they're on the same path. They just have extremely different flavors as games.
Yep.
EverQuest Next is all about heroic fantasy and immersion and characters and story and making a difference in a real world. And Landmark is about wild dreams of anybody that's playing and all the crazy things that they can make, so that it's like essentially a huge smorgasbord that you're never going to finish.
Yeah, there's a clear difference, and one of the examples is the combat. We got introduced to combat in EQ Next and introduced to the combat in Landmark, and there's a clear difference there. With the gear in Landmark, that allows you to choose your abilities, but you mentioned something in the presentation, how the different gear that you align with or pick up will allow you different skills. So how does that actually work out across the board?
Well, if you played Landmark at all recently, so, when you have a grappling hook, you're able to grapple. And when you equip, like, the feather in the bottle, you can do a double jump. And when you equip the lever or anklet, you have a much higher jump. Those are abilities that are associated with items. It's exactly the same with combat. When you equip the sword, you have certain abilities. When you equip a conjurer's staff, you have different abilities. You get a shotgun blast of energy bolts at somebody at a range and be able to snare them down. And the same with the bow and so on and so forth. Even the armor has different abilities.
Right.
So all of that stuff lets you completely customize your game style so that basically you can be what you want to be.
Yeah. I mean, the gear really does, it all plays together. So unlike other games where you're looking for that 7 more DPS or that 10 more strength or whatever it is that you're looking for as a stat, the gear in Landmark and EverQuest Next is all about unlocking those playstyles. So you can't be a magic user in Landmark unless you have a staff that has those kinds of abilities. That's not the way you're going to be playing the game. So you have to go out there and you have to find the gear you want. We showed off the fire sword and shield as an example that everybody seemed to like in the keynote.
Like it. Yeah,
that was I love that response. But if that's the kind of game you want to play, if that's the way you want to be in combat, you have to go find those or craft those or get the pieces and have somebody else craft them for you. And it's really just about finding that combination of items, whether that be weapon or armor, accessories, that just lets you play how you want to play. And we're loving just the mix and match and choices, and it works like everything else. You kind of see a theme here for all the things we're doing. Players can put these together in different ways to find a new playstyle that maybe we never thought of, and that's exactly what we want.
Now take the basis of what you just saw in Landmark and go see the class panel on Saturday. Because honest to God, it's going to blow your mind. It blew my mind, and I know what we're building.
Yes.
Like when we laid it out as graphics on presentations, I was like, holy God.
Things started to click.
Like, wow, you're going to be like, there's a million ways to customize what you can and can't do in this game, and it'll be very apparent when you see that. Yeah. We're streaming that, so it'll be online.
Yeah, everyone will be able to take a look at that.
Wonderful. And with the combat itself, there's a certain route you're taking with the combat. For example, with the cleric there, somebody mentioned battle cleric. That's exactly what we got to see there. What sort of drives you to create these classes? How you're doing so right now?
Well, there's a lot of things that go into it, but we've talked about all these different play styles. That's sort of the focus when we start talking about a class, is what's that play style? What's the focus of that class going to be? And the battle cleric, Darren went through and talked about, or sorry, the cleric. We call it the battle priest or the battle cleric. But the cleric, it's just the cleric. We really wanted to make sure that he had an identity for how he was going to interact with the battlefield and his allies and his enemies, right? And so we define that, and then we decide what kind of abilities make sense with that, what the mechanics are going to be on that. But then it goes past that because we have the multi-classing. And so we also have to look at like how they're going to interact with all the other classes and abilities in the game. And Dave mentioned the panel that we're going to be talking about later. You really got to see that to see just what we're talking about with that.
Darren McPherson, the lead designer, was saying something earlier today that I thought was really great. We didn't design a mechanics system and then figure out combat that could work with those mechanics. Right. We had a vision for what kind of activity we wanted in the game, and we built systems to support that. So we wanted crowd control to make a comeback because it's been dead for a long time. And we wanted to be able to have really fast movement because then crowd control is important. There's all these ploys and counter ploys and stuff like that. You saw with the warrior and the wizard, or warrior and the cleric battle that we showed in the keynote, how they both have very different abilities, but if they use their abilities intelligently, they can counteract each other's ploys and counter ploys. And it's that kind of thinking game that we want to play, because even though it's a fast-paced game, there's still you only have a certain amount of abilities, and it's how you use them and when you use them in the environment, and also how your group mates interact with your abilities that make you effective or not effective. And that's good gameplay.
Yeah. From what I've seen, it looks like everybody's going to be super excited for the skill needed to pull off everything and just the replay value of all of that.
Yeah,
creativity.
Yeah, one of the things that also goes into the combat is that we wanted to make sure that everybody was engaged. Right, Darren McPherson again mentioned the fact that you don't want to stare at the UI and play the UI. We've played those games, we've all played those games, and that's not what we wanted. So we wanted to make sure that everybody was engaged in combat, involved in it, and they were paying attention to what was going on so that they could maximize what they're doing.
You have a few abilities and you get muscle memory. Yeah. Most of the time you're paying attention to the cool combat that's happening in front of you. So by focusing it up here, that allows us to give you the ability to affect the environment and all those other things because you're paying attention to the right thing. You're not just glued to your hotbar.
Amazing. So I don't want to keep you guys too long. Is there anything else you wanted to add? I know we're seeing a lot of stuff on Landmark here on the 27th. We're getting introduced to PvE, PvP then as well.
We'll have Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, and Capture and Hold. And then we'll also have all the game set objects. We're also introducing the landmines, the 3 basic weapons, and
the movers, the teleporters, the flingers, and the moving platforms.
Yep. So yeah, changed overnight. Like one day, bam, Landmark's a different game.
All kinds of exciting stuff. Well, it's always been a pleasure talking to y'all.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thanks.